Hi friends. I gave myself about a week to cool down before I made this video. I had a dear friend visiting this week. A couple days before she came over, she called me and told me that she had been to the lab that day to get her blood drawn. And as she was heading to the bathroom to give a sample, this elderly woman walked in and said to the technician, "I don't want you drawing my blood after that dirty little N-word." I was completely livid. At first I misunderstood the story a bit. I thought that she decided to draw the woman's blood first and then my friend, but no, my friend was actually heading away to the bathroom and she didn't hear what was said after that. But when she came back, the technician was still red and apologized profusely for what the woman had said. And I would like to think that they told the woman to go elsewhere to get her blood drawn, because I wouldn't put up with that. But I told Yvonne, I would have told the woman, I licked that chair you're sitting in. This woman, she's one of my dearest friends, and I don't understand racism. And if you hate someone because of the way they look, you're missing out on a lot of potential friends in your life. Just some examples. The day that her mother died, she still came to my son's concert. I was totally amazed by that. There was a time when our anniversary came and we couldn't afford to do much. She gave us $100 and told us she wanted to spend the night with the kids. And she said, I want you to go to your favorite restaurant and order anything you want. And later on, I want you to tell me about it, and I want you to make me drool. She was there when we came home from the hospital with Carmen. She made us some lamb steak. She used to come over every Wednesday. We have a program in our church where the women are given partners, and then you have a list of women who you are assigned to visit. And I got to visit her at first for 4 years, and sometime after she lost her job, my birthday came along, and she said, I can't afford to take you out to dinner, so how about I come over and I make you dinner? And she came over and made me Caribbean chicken rice, and it was delicious. And we had so much fun. She came over the next week and the week after that, and we started calling it Yvonne Night. And my kids would fight over who got to sit next to her at dinner. And I think Eric was 3 or 4 at the time. And his preschool was at a high school, and it was part of their child psychology curriculum. And one of his big buddies, so they got one-on-one attention at this preschool. One of his big buddies was named Lagwan, and he was an African American. And one day, Eric was trying to verbalize that, he noticed that Yvonne was black. And he says to her, he stares at her for a while, and then he says, your name's Lagwan. Both of us didn't know what he was thinking at the moment. He said, what? Your name's Lagwan. And I said, oh. I said, this boy Lagwan is the only black person he's ever hung out with before, that I know of, anyway. And yeah, he's just noticing that. And some people say children are colorblind. No, it's not true. We notice differences in people. We notice if they have curly hair, or red hair, or blue eyes, or brown eyes. And there's nothing wrong with noticing differences. But we have to teach them there's nothing wrong with being different. When I was a little kid, I had no idea that racism was even a thing. We moved into this house when I was in kindergarten, and we had this family across the street, and they were African American. And I adored them. The dad used to call himself Uncle Steve. and he had the best smile. And one day we got into a huge water fight, and that's one of my favorite memories of living in that neighborhood. And then sometime later in school, we learned about Martin Luther King, and that's when I first knew that racism existed. And but they kind of gave the impression that that made everything better. And that's one thing my friend Yvonne has told me is, did you know that people have told me that racism went away after Martin Luther King? After spending so much time with her, I've been shocked to hear about the things she goes through. And there are different types of racism. There is the, hostility, and there's also, for example, people will come up to her and start speaking Ebonics to her. They assume, oh, you're black, you must talk this way, and she just says, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, that reminds me, when my husband joined the Air Force, there was this girl there who asked if I wanted to come with her to Texas for the graduation, so her boyfriend was joining at the same time. And she talked to people in Ebonics all the time, and I said, what are you doing? She said, you have to speak their language. And I said, their language is English. I mean, we were talking to a couple, an older couple who, what are you eating? Are you eating grass? Or turn that thing off. We were at this basic training graduation when we were standing close to an African American couple, and she started talking Ebonics to them and talking about our hotel room, and she goes, our hotel was ghetto. I was like, oh. I found myself inching further away from her, like I do not know her. Oh, this is one thing that happened to Yvonne, and when she told me, I laughed so hard I was crying. There was a couple that wanted to fix her up with a friend, and they said, we are going to invite both of you over for dinner and really think you're going to hit it off. Well, they thought they were going to hit it off because they're both members of the same church and they were both black, but the guy didn't show up because he had died, and he died because he was 90-something years old. She was in her 30s or 40s at the time. Stop! I can't imagine anyone of any race wanting to be set up with someone 50 years older than them. Actually, maybe 60 years older. It was maybe a decade ago where she had worked hard to get an interview, and there was a woman who was really excited about her, and so she sent her a long ways up north in the snow to get an interview with another person. And as soon as she got there, the guy took one look at her and said, I'm not interviewing her. As I learned more about racism when I was growing up, I started to feel concerned that I would be perceived as racist. And if I made eye contact with someone accidentally while I was in a bad mood or something, then I worried that they thought I hated them when I didn't. Years ago, these girls thought I hated them. Well, they thought that I was into the guy that they were into, and I was miserable and I had a cold and I was breathing through my mouth. And a friend said, hey, these girls think you hate them. And I said, they were there. I didn't even know they were there. And there was a day, I used to walk to school with this girl every day, and when our friends across the street had their niece come stay with them, she started walking to school with us, and my friend said, let's run ahead of her. And I had no idea why she would want to do that, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I talked to my mom about it later, and she said, I think her parents are racist, and they have taught her that way. Just last week, I got some new pull-ups for my daughter, and it has this character on it, and I think this is, it's not a show we've ever walked, it's Doc McStuffins, I think. And I think she's used to cartoon characters who are Caucasian or something. But she brought this to me and she pointed at the girl's face and she said, "Dirty, dirty." And I wasn't sure what she was talking about at first. And I picked it up and I thought, oh no. And I told Yvonne about it. I explained to her, no, that's the color of her skin and she's pretty. And we were watching Moana and she learned about tattoos. And she climbed up onto Yvonne's lap. Yvonne told me about this later. And she was gently rubbing her arm and Sabrina said to her, "Tattoo?" She loves Yvonne though, she calls her grandma, but she's naturally curious about why her skin's so dark. I think it's okay to notice differences, and I teach my kids to celebrate differences. Years ago, when we were living in another town, there were a lot of people who would ask for their kids to go to this other school up the hill because they had the better test scores. And the one at the bottom of the hill, those boundaries had a lot of apartments and stuff, and a lot more kids who spoke English as a second language. So most of the kids in my kids' classrooms, we couldn't even pronounce their names. That's how diverse it was. Kids from all over the world, and I really liked that. Except for the time they got rid of Halloween and decided to replace it with United Nations Day. That was a big flop. No one liked it. They said you could wear cultural clothing, but for the American kids, what are you going to wear? I said maybe my kids are from Transylvania. Halloween was way more fun when I was a kid. We could be as creative as we wanted to. I think they still had the no mask rule, but I loved Halloween because of my mom. She's very creative and she would help me with really awesome costumes. Like one time I was a box of orange Jello and she did such an awesome job painting a cardboard box to look exactly like a box of orange Jello. People thought we bought it from the Jello company. Another time I was a Christmas tree. I was a table. That was in junior high, and all day long people were asking, who is that in there? I wanted my kids to be around kids from different cultures because they're going to work with people from different cultures. And test scores in that school were lower, not because the teachers weren't doing their job, but because there were so many kids who spoke English as a second language, and that affects every subject that they're in when it comes to reading directions and all of those things. And they actually loved going to that school, so I'm glad we made that choice. The town that we live in now, it's not as diverse, and I kind of miss that. So I told my friend, you should have some responses ready for when people say awful, horrible things. There's this episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Lois has a horrible mom, played by Cloris Leachman, and you just love to hear. And she really wants her mom to leave her house, and she doesn't know how else to get rid of her. And she remembers, my mom is a huge racist. So she asks her neighbors, who are African American, if they will take part in getting rid of her mom. And they're quite shocked by that at first. One of them comes over and says, hey, hope you don't mind, I let myself in with the key. And these guys are dentists and stuff. One of them is going, yo, yo, yo. One of them offers to light her cigarette, so he takes it and he puts it in his mouth. And she looks horrified. And then he says, who is this fine lady? 'Cause I like that wagon you're dragging. Okay, I'll have to put in the description which episode that is. You can watch it on Netflix or something. That is the funniest episode. That's probably my favorite episode of all time. I think one of them also says to her, "Oogity boogity!" So I told Yvonne to do that. I told her if I had been there, I would have rubbed my hands on her arms and then gone like this at the person. Ooh. You have black people germs. In summary, racism is stupid. All I can do is teach my kids to love all people and hope that others will do the same. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts or stories. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up.